Hey everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I'm going to be talking about a band that I have loved ever since that I was 15, going on 16. They were part of the original ska movement in the UK, and they became something entirely different, one of England's greatest singles bands. I am talking about the group Madness. Now, I've covered Madness in a previous episode of CD Junkie, but with that one, I covered the band and all their little side solo projects. This time, I'm going to make it a little shorter and focus entirely on the group's studio output. We are going to start this video off the same way I normally like to start them off, by telling you how I got into the band. And that's basically, I was at Licorice Pizza, which was a record chain store, somewhere in 79. So I was either 15 or 16 at the time. And I was flipping through the bins, and I was in the miscellaneous M section, and I stumbled across an album cover that looked exactly like that, One Step Beyond. And I thought, I got to check these guys out. I had no idea if they were new wave, pop, punk, whatever. I bought this album, the next time I got my allowance, took it home, and I was changed from that moment on. What an incredible album. So now we're going to start this episode of CD Junkie by talking about One Step Beyond. This is the album that really introduced the world to the sound of Madness. You got Suggs on lead vocals. You got Chaz Smash, which is Cathal Smith, on vocals and dancing. You've got Chris Foreman, Chrissy Boy, on guitar. You've got Mark Bedford, Betters, on bass. You've also got Mike Barson, Monsieur Barceau, on keyboards. You've got Daniel Woody Woodgate on drums, and you've got Lee Thompson, El Kixo Saxo, on saxophone. What an incredible band, an incredible lineup, an incredible group. These guys were super young. They were in their late teens, early 20s, and they were creating music far beyond their years, very much like Haircut 100 would do a little bit later. There's this chemistry with this band is undeniable. It had to be these guys. Now, Madness existed before this in various guises, but it was this lineup. Now, you don't see Chaz Smash there on the cover, Cathal Smith, but you did see him on the back of the album cover, dancing all around the sides there. And he was kind of just brought in as, an extra member of the band. And he actually ended up being a very, very important part of the band. Wrote some of the greatest songs, and also the harmonies in his vocals. Everything was fantastic. But One Step Beyond, this has the song One Step Beyond. It has My Girl. It has Night Boat to Cairo, Bed and Breakfast Man, the song Madness. Just an absolutely incredible, delightful, upbeat, joyful album. And this is the original deluxe version that came out on Salvo. And it has a whole bonus disc of material. It also has some videos on it as well. And this is absolutely fantastic, essential release. They also released a 35th anniversary on Salvo that had different bonus material on it. And just recently here in the US, they released a US version of it, and it's in thinner package, and it has the same tracks that were on the Salvo release, but the videos are not there. And this has new liner notes by 3 of the members. So all 3 of these versions are different from each other, but the material on the new domestic one is pretty much like the same material on the Salvo one. So I'll probably have to end up parting with one, but this has better liner. It's just collector's nonsense. This next album, their second album, is called Absolutely. Came out in 1980. I remember that I was in driver's ed class, and as soon as I got out of driver's ed, hopped on my bicycle, rode to Licorice Pizza, and bought this. And it is a wonderful, wonderful album. It was October 10th that I bought this, as a matter of fact, 3 days before my 17th birthday, and I just couldn't even wait for my birthday. I had to go get it. It's another stellar collection. You've got songs like Baggy Trousers, Embarrassment, Disappear, Solid Gone, On the Beat Pete, In the Rain, Return of the Los Palmas 7, Ernie, so many great tracks. This is fun. This is almost them kind of moving a little bit away from that ska sound and adapting more of a sort of a music hall sound to them. Jam-packed full of great songs. This is the extended version, so it features B-sides and non-album tracks and a whole live show on disc 2. This is the Salvo version that also features some videos on it. Just recently, here in the US, they released a 2 CD version, different packaging, and it has the same exact tracks as the Salvo version. It doesn't have the videos, but it has different liner notes. So again, you have to make the decision. Are you going to get the Salvo version or are you going to get the BMG version? It's entirely up to you, but you need to own that album. Now, the next album that came out was 1981. It's an album called 7. And this might be my favorite Madness album. I'm not saying it's the best because it took what they were doing with Absolutely and it refined it more pop, really, really moving away from the ska and sort of embracing that British pop roots. Just great songwriters, mature and sophisticated. And this album contained tracks like Cardiac Arrest, Shut Up, Tomorrow's Dream, Pac-A-Mac, Benny Bullfrog. So many great songs on Madness 7. This is the version that contains bonus material, as you can see there, as well as videos. Recently here in the US, they released a version of it. Has the same exact bonus tracks as the Salvo one, but it doesn't have the videos, and it has new notes by 3 of the band members. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, by the way, 7 actually on the bonus disc contains the hit single It Must Be Love, because that was only a single when it first came out. It wasn't actually on the album. Now, this next release I'm going to show you didn't come out chronologically this way. This was much later, but this fits in perfectly with what I'm talking about, because in 1981, Madness actually released a Madness movie where they sort of recreated their early years right before they became famous. It's not Hard Day's Night, but it's a fun movie to watch. And the movie was called Take It or Leave It. And Salvo released the soundtrack to that movie. And most of it is by Madness. You're also going to get Fats Domino and the Four Tops on there as well. And this also includes a DVD of the movie. So you're getting the soundtrack to the movie, which was never released when the movie came out. This is the first time it was ever released. You're getting that, plus you're getting the movie. So that's definitely something to check out. And in 1982, they came out with their most critically successful album up to that point, and that was The Rise and Fall, which is a concept album. And all these characters that they are portraying there are actually in the songs that are on the album. This is the original album that featured Our House, Tomorrow's Just Another Day. This is the version that contains bonus tracks, videos, and a whole lot more on 2 discs. It's a really, really wonderful album. But this album never came out in the US. What they did is in the US, they put out an album called Madness, which you'll see right there. You'll probably recognize that cover. And that's kind of a compilation of tracks off of this album, plus some older tracks, including It Must Be Love. And I think they put One Step Beyond on that as well. I've never really picked up that album because I had everything already, but I'm sure eventually I'll probably walk into some store and see it and buy it. In 1984, they put out the album Keep Moving. And this was another album that's sort of moving on from The Rise and Fall, still, mature, and, it's more pop oriented. And unfortunately, right when this album was released, or maybe even before, Mike Barson, the piano player, keyboard player, left the band. But this was his last album with Madness up to this point. And it's got a lot of great songs in it. There were a couple singles that came out before the album, Wings of a Dove and The Sun and Rain. And those are fantastic. They are not on the album. They were on the American version of the album, which had the same cover. But there are some great songs on here. And of course, this is the one that with a bunch of bonus tracks and videos that came out on Salvo. So without Mike Barson, the band, remember I was talking much earlier in the video about chemistry? Well, that chemistry was sort of shaken up a little bit. And the band did go back in the studio and they recorded Mad Not Mad. This is a way more serious album. In fact, it's almost dark and somber in some points. Very mature. Songs like Yesterday's Men, Tears You Can't Hide. These are just wonderful songs. And it was very much Madness, but it was a very different Madness. They were no longer being the, kids in the schoolyard. They were being adults because they were all in their mid-20s by this time, believe it or not. This is a 3-disc version there, and it has loads of bonus material on it. And there's some really beautiful moments on the album. Mad Not Mad 1985. Now, the band split up after that, and a few of the members, I think Suggs, Cathal Smith, Chris Foreman, and Lee Thompson, they continued under the name The Madness. So they didn't want to associate themselves with Madness. Hey, this is a new beast. This is us doing something different. So we're not Madness anymore. We're The Madness, which, I don't know, 1988. There's some good moments on it. This CD version does have bonus tracks. This was actually supposed to be reissued by Salvo, and it never was. This is not an album that I'd say rush out and get, but if you do stumble across it, there's some really good moments on it. But they are actually trying new things, which is absolutely fabulous. It's just not an entirely successful album, in my opinion. But The Madness is definitely a cool addition to the Madness collection. So the band actually did get back together, all 7 members. I think it was like 1994, and they started playing live, and they would do it every year. It was called Madstock, and it was a huge success. But they didn't get back into the studio until they released the album Wonderful in 1999, 11 years after The Madness, and 14 years after Mad Not Mad. And this, I think, is the best album since 7. It is so good. Classic Madness. Most of the stuff that they'd put out had been produced by Clive Langer and Alan Winstanley. And they're back, and it just has that classic Madness sound, and that chemistry is back, and it just sounds absolutely wonderful. This is, of course, the expanded edition with bonus tracks, songs like Love Struck and Johnny the Horse, classic Madness. This did not do very well, which surprised the heck out of me. It didn't do as well as I thought it would, because it's such a great, great album, and you definitely need to check it out. Now, the next album they did was without Chris Foreman, guitar player. I don't know why he chose to sit out this album, but they put it out and they call it the Dangerman Sessions, Volume 1. And it's basically the band going in the studio and doing cover versions of songs that influenced them, inspired them. Mostly old ska and reggae tunes, but there's a couple like soul songs like You Keep Me Hanging On. This is the version that just came out recently, and it has bonus tracks on it. The Dangerman Sessions by Madness. This came out in 2005. In 2009, they returned with probably their most critically successful album to date, and it's called The Liberty of Norton Folgate. And this was kind of a, I guess it was a concept album, but it's very much lyrically along lines with what they were doing with The Rise and Fall. But musically, it's just shows what great songwriters they are, and how great they work together. So many great songs on this album. And, it sounds like classic Madness, like the Wonderful album did. The Dangerman Sessions sounds like Madness, but it's a different kind of Madness. But, Wonderful was a return to form, and The Liberty of Norton Folgate was definitely a return to form. There's also a version of that album. It's a deluxe edition that contains a lot more tracks. So if you love that album, you may want to try to track down the deluxe edition of Liberty of Norton Folgate. In 2012, they returned with an album that was very, very different. They actually brought in some different producers and were trying, different musical styles. And that is an album called Wee Wee CC Ya Ya Da Da. And the album cover was done by the same person that did Sgt. Pepper, if you can believe that. But this is a really good collection of songs. It's not that classic Madness sound. They're breaking out. They're doing something different. And I got to hand it to them because the songs are really, really good. It's just, like I said, it's different sonically than previous Madness albums. But this didn't really get much attention here in the States. And I think that there's probably a deluxe edition of this that I was never able to pick up, which is unfortunate because I'd love to hear more music from this period. But that is Madness. Wee Wee CC Ya Ya Dada came out in 2012. I just like to say that album name. And then finally, in 2016, they put out an album called Can't Touch Us Now. And this returns back to that Madness sound. But, by this time, Madness was not complete. Like I said, Chris Foreman had left, but he had come back. Betters had left at some point. He had come back. And Cathal Smith He actually was gone by the time but they were still putting out good songs. It's not as catchy and straightforward as their previous work. Some of the songs you have to listen to a little bit, a few, 3, 4 times before they really kick in. But it is classic madness. There is this. I wonder if there is a version of this album, a deluxe version with more tracks. There probably is. I'll have to eventually track it down. But this is the last studio album to date. I'm hoping that they do stuff. Now, all of the band members at some point, during the initial breakup or even during these periods, they went off and they did stuff. Suggs has some solo albums. I know that Lee and Chris were in Crunch or the Nutty Boys. It just depends on which release. Then there's like the Lee Thompson Ska Orchestra. Cathal Smith put out an album. But Madness were and are an incredible band. Even when they try new and different things, it still comes out sounding wonderful. It may not sound exactly like Madness, but the core of who the band is and who they were and who they are is still there. Now, what I've done is I've put together about a 6-minute medley featuring little tiny excerpts from 34 different Madness songs, anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4 songs from each of the albums I talked about. Sit back, relax, give this a listen, and I'll see you on the other side.
Hey you! Don't watch that! Watch this! One step beyond!
Madness, madness, they call it madness. Madness, my girl's mad at me. I didn't want to see the film tonight. But did it really turn out bad? All I learned at school was how to bend, not break the rule. Oh, what fun we had, but at that time it seems so bad. Trying to make commitment, you're an embarrassment. Yes, an embarrassment, a living endorsement. The intention that you have booked was an intention that was overlooked. They say, a stab in the back, the smoke and the black as it moulders to his grave. Disappear with the fun and the fear, another chance to misbehave. Standing here in the rain, maybe the weather will change again, or stay really same. In the morning I awake, my arms, my legs, my body aches. The sky outside is wet and grey, so begins another weary day. Now pass the blame and don't blame me. Just close your eyes and count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Then I'll be. Don't you worry, there's no hurry. It's a lovely day, could all be going your way. Take the dog's advice. It must be love, love, love. It must be love, love, love. Nothing more, nothing less. Who knows it's the time? Who can read the signs? Who can really change in the city? Welcome to the house of fun. Now I've come of age. Welcome to the house of fun. Welcome to the. I hear them say tomorrow's just another day. I hear them say it gets better every day. I hear them say our house in the middle of our street. Our house in the middle of our. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do we do now? Whoa, whoa. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do we do now? I hear the sound of rain falling in my ears, washing away the weariness like tears. I can feel my troubles run.
My name is Michael Caine.
And all I wanted was a word, a photograph. And all I wanted was yesterday's man. Hang on to today. Hang on to sin any old way. It must get better in the long. It's black and white. Don't try the past behind you, but let us all move on. There's a new horizon. Life has just begun.
Anyway, that's it. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. I hope it inspires you to go check out Madness. Maybe pull those records out of your collection or those CDs out of your collection, or maybe get online or go search for these albums in the wild. Just really a worthwhile band. But that's it for me. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, to ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me. I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.